people all around us being communist spies. So during this time period and under McCarthyism, there was a lot of people accusing each other of being communists. And Joseph McCarthy kind of headed this up. So he really went after the Hollywood movie makers, because he thought that the Hollywood movie makers were creating different movies and putting out these movies, but in these movies were different communist ideals. And they were kind of underlying, you didn't realize what it was, but that's what it was. And they were trying to spread communism that way. So he brought in, if you did the assignment, you would have read the McCarthy task sheet. And it was talking about how, he brought all of these celebrities and different people to court, and even people high up in the government. He went after other government officials and pretty much accused them of being communists and put them on trial, and pretty much just try to see if people could somehow get out of the accusation. But really, once you were accused, you were accused. It was really hard for you to do anything to not be seen as a communist once you were put on trial by Joseph McCarthy. So one thing people would do is, if I was put on trial, then to try and get out of it, I'd be like, oh, well, Miss Stackhouse is a communist, and Miss Shampry is a communist, and Miss Kuznias are communists. So I'm not a communist, but I can tell you that they are, so you should go after them. So a lot of people were just snitching on each other, but it wasn't actual communist. We call it a witch hunt. So kind of like the Salem witch trials, where people accused people of being witches, and just because they were accused, they were put to death. And that's essentially what happened here. Whether it was government officials or other celebrities, once you were accused, you weren't put to death necessarily, but your career was killed because you were seen as a communist. And we were so scared of communists and so on edge of people being spies that people didn't trust you anymore. So ultimately, when it came down to it, none of these people were communist. It was him just accusing people and then them getting in trouble, and really it ruined a lot of people's lives. But he went after so many people and put so many people on trial, but eventually they kind of, people started thinking he was a little off his rocker. And he did a couple things that really made people not favor him anymore, and he was eventually ousted. But something that did happen to show how extreme we were, there was a couple called the Rosenbergs, and they were investigated, and they ended up being communist spies, and they were put to death under during the Cold War and during this Red Scare, which really just shows how far we were going and how much we disliked communists and the USSR. We just put this couple to death. So it's pretty crazy. But again, our whole thing, we were nervous that if people were spies and if they were coming in, then they would be able to start slowly spreading their communist ideals to their neighbors, and then their neighbors would start believing it and spreading it, and then ultimately we would fall to communism. So the government put out different videos, and it was if if a person does this or reads anything that talks about this or that or whatever, they might be a communist, and if they're a communist, make sure you're reporting it. So the government was encouraging people to report people who were communists, which isn't necessarily a great thing, because people start getting all up in their heads and getting anxiety about it and scared, and then accusing people, and then once you're accused, your life's done, or it can be. So that was a pretty big deal during this time period in the US, so the Red Scare and then McCarthyism. Another thing that happened during the Cold War at home was this idea of this duck and cover. So we were really scared the USSR was going to use their nuclear weapons. So to help everybody with that and to help with those anxieties, the government started putting out different videos that would show how you can save yourself if there's a nuclear attack. So one of them is the duck and cover videos, which are really funny. I'm gonna share with you only a minute of the video, but this is called Bert the Turtle. That was their little mascot for this, and this is literally what they put out into schools in the 50s and 60s for kids to watch so they could protect themselves if a nuclear attack happened.
Dum dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum, diddle dum dum. There was a turtle by the name of Bert. And Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He'd duck and cover, duck and cover.
He did what we all must learn to do. You
And you
and you
and you duck and cover.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover. This is
So as I'm saying, this is an official civil defense film produced in cooperation with the federal civil defense. So it's like a government issued video, and like this is what people would do. Like that's the kids duck and covering. So they would actually, like the way we have a fire drill or like a tornado drill, they had duck and cover drills. So not that that would actually help anything, but it was kind of just to help like keep people at ease mentally. Like, oh, if at least we have a plan in case there's a nuclear attack. Something else people did was create fallout shelters, and I'm not going to pull this up, but this is a link. I would suggest you go. It's interesting. But they pretty much did like underground bunkers, and they would supply them to have like years worth of supplies in case there was a nuclear attack. So people thought like if there was, they could go into their bunkers and they'd be able to live there for a few years, and then they would come out and hopefully the radiation would subside and they would survive it.